Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Brilliant as the Sun, Retelling of Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 5, The Universal Order. We are going to be reading the concluding chapter of Canto 5, The Hellish Planets. Mukham Karoti Vachalam, Pankum Langhayate Girim, Yat Kripa Tamham Vande, Shri Gurum Dina Tarinam, Brahmananta Madhavam, Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram, Hari Om Tat Sat. The 60,000 sages on the Ganges bank sat in expectant silence, their shawls pulled tightly around their shoulders against the night chill. Parikshit sat absorbed in thought. The vast cosmos was indeed wondrous and difficult to comprehend. Verse 1, he said to Shukadev, "My dear sir, you have said living beings achieve various destinations according to their desires and actions. Why are there such differences among conditioned souls, which result in their achieving varying degrees of happiness and distress in different planets? Please explain this to me." Verse 2, Shukadev said, "O king, as you know, there are three material modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Since these modes influence conditioned souls, their actions are also of three types. Those influenced by goodness act religiously and therefore feel happy. Those influenced by passion experience mixed misery and happiness. And those who act in ignorance live like animals and are always unhappy." The three modes affect people to different degrees, therefore their destinations in their next lives vary. Verse 3. Just as differing grades of pious acts result in different levels of heavenly enjoyment, so differing degrees of impiety result in different hellish sufferings. Least severe is the suffering of those who act sinfully because of madness. Those who know the difference between pious and impious acts but still act impiously receive an intermediate level of suffering, while those who sin because of atheism suffer the most severe punishment. Because of ignorance, every living being has been carried by their many desires to thousands of hells since time immemorial. Verse 4, where are the hells located? Asked Parikshit. Are they outside the universe, within its covering, or on this planet? Verses 5 to 6, they are all beneath Patal Lok, slightly above the Garbhodak ocean. Pitrilok is also in this region. Its residents, headed by the Agnishwatas, always desire good for their descendants and constantly think of Krishna. Their king is Yamaraj, the powerful son of Vivaswan, the sun god. He lives in Pitrilok with his assistants in obedience to Krishna's will. His agents, known as the Yamadutas, bring all sinful men to him after they die. He then judges them and sends them to the appropriate hells for punishment. Shukadev swept his arm around in a great arc, and a terrible scene appeared in the sky above. Hideous beings with powerful bodies dragged screaming souls toward a great throne where the fearful-looking Yamaraj sat, flanked by the blackish forms of time and death. Verse 7, as the image faded, Shukadev said, "Some say there are 21 hells, while others say there are 28, all for punishing sinful souls. Listen as I describe them." Verse 8, one who steals another man's wife or possessions is bound by the rope of time by the fierce Yamadutas and thrown into the hell known as Tamishra. The sky darkened, pale and emaciated men and women ran screaming from pursuing Yamadutas who were wielding sticks and hurling torrents of abuse. When their victims fainted, the frightful-looking Yamadutas beat them more severely until they again leapt up and ran. They cried out for food and water but received nothing. The onlooking sages gasped. Verse 9, the image faded and Shukadev said, "If one slyly cheats another man and enjoys his wife and belonging, he goes to the Andha Tamishra, where the suffering souls are like trees chopped at the roots Even before reaching that darkness and dismal place, they must endure extreme miseries. The suffering there resembles that in Tamishra, but more intense. It is so great that the victims lose their mind and become blind. Thus is it known as Andha Tamishra, the land of blackness and ignorance. Verses 10 and 11. Behold now the hell known as Raurava. Huge, frightening animals with pointed horns and spiked backs appeared in the sky above. They gouged and repeatedly pierced helpless men and women who screamed in agony. Many onlookers jumped up, their hearts palpitating. Shukadev calmed them. Have no fear, this is just a mirage. My dear king, people who think they are the material body and who work hard day and night for money, careless for the violence they inflict on others, come to Raurav after death. Here their past sins take the form of these fearsome animals known as Rurus, which constantly inflict misery on the evildoers. Verses 12 and 13. Again the image faded and Shukadev said, the next hell is Maharaurav. Flesh eaters go there after death. In this hell, a very ferocious breed of Rurus known as Kravyada eat their victims alive. Those wicked persons who cook poor animals and birds alive go to an even worse hell named Kumbhipaka. In the sky appeared huge vats of boiling oil over the blazing fires. Jeering Yamadoots seized hold of screaming and struggling men and women and hurled them into the vats, where they sizzled and smoked. Many sages wept. Parikshit's face was white. Verse 14. The image faded and Shukadev said, anyone who kills a Brahmin goes to the hell known as Kalasutra, which has a circumference of 10,000 yojans and is made entirely of copper, which is heated from below by fire and from above by the scorching sun. Those who kill Brahmins must burn within from unbearable hunger and thirst, and without from the hot copper and scorching sun. They suffer here for as many thousands of years as there are hairs on an animal. He waved his hand, and in the sky there appeared a vast copper plain. Naked people writhed in agony, some sitting, some lying down, and others running here and there. Gradually the image faded and Shukadev spoke again. Verse 15. Asi Patravana is the hell where people who willfully and needlessly disobey religious principles will go. The aerial image showed fierce Yamadutas whipping screeching people who fled, desperately seeking shelter in groves of palm trees whose leaves were like sharpened swords. The razor-sharp leaves shredded their bodies and they cried piteously, oh, what shall I do? Save me, save me. Many fainted and were mercilessly whipped where they lay. Verse 16. As that image faded, Shukadev said, the next hell is Sukharamukha. This is where sinful kings and government officials go after death. If they punished innocent people or inflicted corporal punishment on a Brahmin. In the vision, the Yamadutas were dragging men toward huge metal rollers. They pushed their thrashing victims into the device and turned its great handles, crushing them like sticks of sugarcane. Terrible screams rang out as they died, only to be miraculously revived and again subjected to same punishment. Verse 17, Shukadev said, the hell Andhakupa is where people go who torment inferior living beings like bugs and mosquitoes. Such insignificant creatures are unaware that their bites are painful. Those who torment them are punished in Andhakupa after death. After all, they're all the creatures whom they hurt constantly attack them, robbing them of sleep. Unable to rest, they wander in the darkness. Verse 18, Shukadev said, the next hell is Krimi Bhojana, one who does not offer his food to Krishna and then distribute the remnants to guests. The elderly, Brahmins, children and all other creatures is no better than a crow. If he does not atone for his sins before death, he lives as a worm in a 100,000 yojan wide pit of worms in Krimi Bhojan. He eats the other worms as they also eat him. Verse 19. Now behold the hell known as Sandamasha. In the sky appeared countless people lashed to posts amid blazing fires. Yamadutas pulled red-hot iron tongs from the fires with which they brutally skinned their howling victims. Shukadev said, these people needlessly robbed others, especially Brahmins, of their wealth. Verse 20, Shukadev said, now behold the hell known as Tapta Surmi, where people who engaged in illicit sex are sent after death. In the sky, Yamadutas thrust naked men and women onto red-hot iron forms of the opposite sex. As they writhed and howled in agony, the Yamadutas pitilessly whipped them. Verse 21, the next hell, Vajrakantaka Shalmali, is for those who showed no discrimination in sex life, even to the point of having intercourse with the animals. In the sky appeared a vision of a huge silk cotton tree full of thorns that looked like sharpened iron bolts. Naked men and women hung upside down on the tree, and Yamadutas pulled them down violently until the thorns shredded their bodies. Verse 22, amid gasps from the watching sages, the image faded and was replaced with another. Behold the hell known as Vaitarini, said Shukadev, those born into religious families who become degraded and irresponsible fall into this fearful hell, a vast moat surrounding the other hells. Within the sky appeared a great swirling river. Yamadutas threw their struggling victims into the murky waters where the sharks, crocodiles, and piranhas tore them to pieces, darkening the waters still further with their blood. Some of them tried to swim away, gagging as the foul water entered their mouths. Shukadev said, although repeatedly devoured, these sinful people are again and again revived for thousands of years. They suffer in this way, in this terrible river filled with stool, urine, pus, blood, hair, nails, bones, marrow, flesh, and fat, all the time remembering their past sins. Verse 23, the vision vanished, and Shukadev said, the hell known as Puyuda is the destination where low-class men and women go who were strangers to the religion, cleanliness, and regulation. A great brownish sea appeared in the sky, accompanied by the terrible aroma. Men and women bobbed up and down in that vast ocean, repeatedly ingesting mouthfuls of the filthy water and then retching the contents back up. Shukadev said, this is an ocean of pus, stool, urine, mucus, saliva, and other unmentionable substances. Verse 24, the next hell, Pranarodha, is where men who needlessly hunted and killed poor animals go after death. In the sky appeared an image of rows of men tied to stakes. Before them stood Yamadutas, firing barbed arrows at them. Their bodies were ripped to pieces, and they sent up great shrieks of agony, but they did not die. Verse 25, those who slaughter animals in sacrifice suffer in the hell called Vishasana, an image of men and women being stretched, dismembered, burned with brands, stabbed, sliced, and crushed appeared in the sky. Each time their bodies were restored and they were subjected to more pain. Verse 26, Shukadev said, if a man forces his wife to drink his semen, he goes to the hell known as Lalabhaksha. He is hurled into the putrid river of semen which he must swallow. Verse 27, that scene was replaced by an image of fierce dogs ripping people apart with long, pointed fangs that dripped with blood. Shukadev said, professional thieves, murderers, and corrupt government officers who unfairly tax the citizens are repeatedly devoured by the dog's hair. Verse 28, the image faded, and Shukadev said, behold the hell, Avichima, atop a mountain with wretched-looking men and women who were bound hand and foot. Beneath it was that appeared to be an ocean, but as the Yamadutas hurled the people off the mountain, it was soon apparent that it was a sea of sharp-edged rocks shaped like ocean waves. The people were smashed into pieces on those rocks, Then they were again revived by Yamadutas with another body and carried back into the mountain top to suffer the same punishment again. Those who cheat in business or any monetary transaction come here, said Shukadev. Verse 29. An image then appeared of men and women stretched and pinned to the ground, while the Yamadutas poured molten metal into their forced open mouths. It smoked and sizzled as it fell upon the horrified victims, burning them to ashes. Again, they were reconstituted in order to receive more of the same treatment. Behold the hell, Ayafana, said Shukadev. This is where men and women from good families who resort to drinking alcohol must go. Verse 30. Next appeared an image of people hanging by their feet, their heads beneath the earth in trenches. They could be heard coughing and spluttering, crying out in distress as the Yamadutas looked on. Here is the hell known as Kshara Kardama, where low-minded persons who disrespected their superiors must burn in pits filled with salt paste and other burning substances. Verse 31, the vision faded. It was replaced with an image of terrified men and women, fleeing, cackling Rakshasas wielding blood-soaked swords and scimitars, while caught their limbs were severed and their throats slit. The Rakshasas danced in jubilation as they drank their victims' foaming blood. This is the hell known as Rakshagana Bhojana. Those who sacrifice human beings to goddess Kali and ate their victims' flesh, amid dancing and singing, come here, their victims taking the form of Rakshasas, repeatedly inflict upon them the exact pain they gave to others. Verse 32, there then appeared a frightful scene of men and women tied to posts being repeatedly pierced with lances, and as they cried for mercy, sharp-beaked birds such as vultures and herons swooped down and tore their bodies with their talons and beaks. Behold, Shula Prota, said Shukadev, those who feign giving protection to animals and birds, but then torment them for sport, suffer here after death. Verse 33, next appeared dreadful-looking serpents with 5 or 7 hoods, chasing and swallowing fleeing men and women as if they were so many mice. Behold, Danda Shuka, my dear king, those who are like malicious serpents, always angry and giving pain to others, will find themselves here. Verse 34, the vision was replaced with one of the Yamadutas hurling tightly bound people into dark wells from which emanated swirls of smoke. Behold the hell, Avat Nirodhana, people who bully the weak, especially the disabled, blind or deaf, by imprisoning them or throwing them into the wells or mountains, caves are themselves suffocated by the poisonous fumes in these wells. In the sky, verse 35, in the sky then appeared an image of thousands of men and women lying on their backs, their arms and legs staked. Fierce birds of prey peered at them from above, suddenly swooping down and forcefully plucking out their eyes. Behold the hell. Parayavartana, those who greeted guests and visitors with cruel glances suffer here after death. Verse 36, next appeared thousands of people tied spread-eagle to large looms. Yamadutas pierced them with long needles, weaving threads of gold and silver throughout their bodies. See now the hell Suchimukha. This is where misers suffer after death for the sins they committed in acquiring and protecting their ill-gotten wealth. Verse 37, as the image once more faded, Shukadev said, my dear king, in Yamraja's province are many thousands of hellish planets. The sinful people I have described and others I have not must enter these according to the degree of their sin. The pious, however, ascend to the heavenly regions. They ascend to the heavenly regions. After exhausting the results of their pious and impious acts, everyone again takes birth on earth. Parikshit sat for a minute without speaking, witnessing so much suffering had been a harrowing experience. Why had Shukadev shown and described the hells in such graphic detail? He asked, "My lord, what is the benefit of hearing of these hells?" Verse 38 to 39, Shukadev said, "They are a part of Vishnu's Virat Roop. I earlier explained how one can attain liberation by meditating on this universal form created by Vishnu's external energies. Just by hearing about or describing the Virat Roop, one's faith in Krishna and one's determination to cultivate a loving relationship with him gradually increases. Devotees are not interested in improving their worldly existence. They want to get out of the conditioned life. To succeed in this, one must first control the mind by meditating on the Lord's Virat Roop. Only then will it be possible to fix one's mind on Krishna's spiritual form and pastimes, which is the devotee's goal. Hearing about the hells would certainly encourage people to get out of the worldly existence." Thought Parikshit, hearing about the hells would certainly encourage people to get out of the worldly existence. Thought Parikshit, even if one went to heaven, that was still a temporary situation. Eventually, he would descend again and inevitably commit sins that would take him to hell. Becoming Krishna conscious was the only solution. How foolish people were to not take that opportunity. He shook his head slowly as Shukadev continued. Verse 40, "My dear king, I have now described the earth and other planetary systems along with their lands, rivers, and mountains. I have also described space, the oceans, the lower planets, the directions, the stars, and the hells. These make up the Lord's wondrous, gigantic, universal form in which all creatures dwell. What more shall I tell you?" The sun was approaching its zenith. Groups of red and green parrots fluttered squawking in and out of the trees surrounding the grove where Sutta was speaking. The 88,000 sages listening to Sutta sat in shocked silence as he ended his account of Shukadev's narration about the hells. The descriptions had been deeply disturbing. Many sages present resolved to increase their efforts to disseminate spiritual knowledge. Kali Yuga had arrived. It was a dark, sinful age, and so many people would descend into hell if not properly guided. Sutta suggested that they adjourn to say their midday prayers and refresh themselves soon that morning. So with this, we come to the end of the last chapter of Canto 5, the hellish planets. And it's been a pleasure reading Canto 5, and I'm thinking that I should read one or two appendix as well from this canto, because they are really enlightening. So thank you for joining. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.